I guess, but again, keep in mind, you said this is a 2-hour block. I
Yeah,
mean,
give or take.
okay.
And if there aren't a ton of questions, this might only be an hour. Just, I try and allocate 2 hours just because.
I mean, we can go back and do it again, like, whatever, but just know that at 11 o'clock, we got a hard stop because we gotta have a meeting with Tracy and the command staff.
Okay. Well, then in that case, we'll just jump right on in. So anytime you guys open up the software, of course, you'll have to log in with your credentials. In this case, I'm just using the default admin since that's all I've got set up. But once you guys each have your own logins, make sure you're using those. Now, you can use those logins on any computer that has ViewVault. It doesn't have to be any specific computer. They'll all operate the same, at least from a ViewVault standpoint.
So as long as ViewVault is loaded on the computer, you can just log in.
Yep.
Okay.
So, anytime you get logged into the ViewVault software, My Dashboard, it's the very, very top left option here. That's always going to be the default landing page. And My Dashboard, all it is a predefined search. It's gonna pull up videos that belong to whoever is logged in. So if you don't have videos, you'll never see anything actually populate here. But if you do have videos, here, let me make this a little bit easier for you guys to see. But if you do have videos, then they will pop up there depending on what. There we go, that easier.
Yeah, it's a little better.
Depending on what is selected. Currently, the drop down over here has a few options: reviewed, not reviewed, last 30, 60, and 90 days. So if you have videos that belong to your user that fit that criteria, they will pop up here. Makes it pretty quick and easy to find videos from your own user to review quickly and easily without having to go through the search function itself. But if you're looking for videos that belong to anybody else, you'll have to use the search function itself, the second option here. And that will give you some search criteria you can use to find the videos. By default, recorded within the last 30 days is selected, but really you have a lot of control here. These are some basic fields that are in here, but you also have this additional search criteria dropdown with quite a few other options that you can select from. One of the ones that I find is super handy is the uploaded. It operates just like the recorded, where you have a drop down for between, before, after, on, or within. But rather than looking for a specific recorded date, you're looking for a specific date when it was actually uploaded to the system. So say for instance, you've got a video that was recorded somewhere around that midnight mark. You're not really sure if it was started before that point or if it was started just right after that point. You're not sure exactly which day it was actually initiated. Whereas if you know that it was uploaded that morning, then you can just go for uploaded and look for either that specific day or date range and find it that way. Or if for some reason the system lost its time and you don't know what date it says that it was recorded on, but you know when it was uploaded, well, that uploaded option makes it pretty easy to find the video. But anytime that you have one of these checkboxes applied, it is looking for that search criteria and it's applying it. If you have it unchecked, then it's not applying it. So if you uncheck everything and you hit search, it's going to look for all videos in the system regardless of basically any details whatsoever. But if you want to change it, you simply use that magnifying glass again and you can specify what you're after. So say a specific operator, I can come in here, use the binoculars icon to pull up the list of all of the users in the system, and if I click on them, then it's looking for videos from those particular operators. You can also remove them using the little X here. So you have a lot of control there. Now, one of the nice features is if you're finding that you do a similar search periodically, maybe you're looking for specific videos from a specific date range, from specific users or devices, what you can do is apply that search criteria in here and then use this save button to save that search criteria as a predefined search. So say, for instance, I'm looking for videos recorded within the last 30 days from these particular users. I can hit save, give that a name. And now, if I go system default, that's what applies there. If I go to my test one that I just created, now it just applies that search criteria. Makes it a lot quicker and easier to apply specific criteria to look for rather than having to click through one by one and actually apply each of those individual fields. So again, very useful if you're doing a search periodically for really the same kind of thing. Now, back on the search results, you'll have a list of all of the videos that actually fit the criteria that you're looking for. And you've got basic details on here, such as the start time, the date and time, a description if it's available at all. All videos when they upload don't have a description on them, so you'll just have this no description available if that's the case. You've got your device name. So if it's recorded from a particular vehicle, that vehicle has a name associated with it. That's what you would see here. You have an event. So each of the systems, you can set it up so that there's a prompt. Currently, when I was doing the demo, I did show that off, where the user, they stop the recording, that prompt comes up asking, hey, what event is this? Is it a traffic stop? Is it a UI, pursuit, warning, arrest? And that's fully customizable by you guys. But if they did apply that, then it would pop up here with what that event is. This can also be done after the fact. So for these videos that don't have an event on them, I'll show you how to actually apply that. But you also have your triggered by. In this case, it's all lights, but you could also do it from the wireless microphone. You can do it from the record button itself. Could be a geofence, it could be a speed violation, it could be from a collision. So there's a lot of options there, but the triggered by will tell you what started that actual recording. And then the size of the file itself is listed on the far right. In the bottom pane there are extra details regarding that particular event that you have selected. So lots of details here about who started the recording, when it was started, the states of it. So you've got your workflow state, you've got incident numbers, you've got what the actual event ID is, a lot of different details. So that can help you determine if that's the video that you're after. Beyond that is just double clicking on any of these videos to pull up the playback page. Now, because these are dual stream systems, you have two video feeds that are side by side. So you can see your in-car and your exterior road facing. Now, pretty standard playback controls. You've got your play, pause, you've got your stop, you've got your reverse, forward, and then on the ones on the ends, that allows you to skip between marks on the video. Each video is going to have at least 3 marks. One is going to be the very start of the pre-event. The second mark is going to be when the record trigger happened, whether that's flipping the light bar controller or hitting the record button itself or wireless microphone, what have you, you'll have a mark there. And then one at the very end is when the recording was actually stopped. So jumping between the marks allows you to go to those particular places. But if a mark was added during a recording at the mirror, you'll have another mark in there for that. You can also add marks in software side here. So say for instance, we're reviewing this video and at this particular point somebody said something or somebody threw something out the window, just anything that you feel that needs extra details added to it. Go to that point in the video, and then to add a mark, you simply use this little blue circle with the red flag on it to add a video mark. That will take you directly to the Marks tab here at the bottom, where you can add a name and a note to that mark about what you saw, what you heard, why that mark is there, what's important. This also holds true for the other marks on the video. So you can go to the video start, video end, and also when the record trigger happened, the lights here. So you can change the names of those, you can add in details at those points if needed. But it makes it quick and easy to navigate to those points without actually having to scrub through the timeline or play it back. Beyond that, your video details tab has a lot of those details that were on the search page. The difference is in here, at least as an administrator, you can change who the operator is. So say for instance, the user didn't sign into the system and started recording, or maybe it's under the wrong person. Maybe whoever was using the vehicle before didn't sign out, and that user, the second user that got in the vehicle, started their shift, didn't sign in. The video is going to be under whoever it was before. You can come in here after the fact and correct that. You can also set the event ID. So in this case, it's already set to traffic stop, but for a video that doesn't have an ID on it, you can come in here and select that. You can also provide a reference ID or an incident number if you'd like, to reference back to some case that you have, some paperwork, something somewhere. And a description. This is really a notes field. You can punch in whatever details that you want here, and really it's for your own purposes. But whatever you punch into that description field is what will show up in the video search page. So if this video is of particular importance, I definitely recommend adding details to this section so that on the search page you can quickly and easily identify that video of particular importance. Lastly is this workflow state. By default, there are two states in the system, reviewed and not reviewed. Now, not reviewed is the default. Every single video uploads as not reviewed, and just going into the playback page and playing back anything or adding details does not mark that video as reviewed. It's a manual thing. So if you want it to be listed as a reviewed video, you have to select reviewed and then hit the save button in the bottom right. So really that's for your own purposes. You can set up the system with an automatic archive and an automatic deletion policy that operates off of the workflow state. So say for instance you only want videos to automatically delete or automatically archive if they have been marked as reviewed, you can set it up as that. Otherwise, not reviewed is kind of the default that we work off of. And I'll show you more about the workflow states when we get more into the admin section of things. But beyond that, we've got the metadata tab, which is going to show you some basic details on the vehicle information. So you've got your accelerometer readouts, vehicle speed, and the distance from home base. That's not currently set up, so these will always just read 00. If you set up a home base location, which is just GPS coordinates, then as the vehicle is traveling around, it will actually show you how far away from that location the system is. You also have your sensor data here. Currently, the lights and the wireless microphone are hooked up, so if the light bar is on or if the wireless microphone is triggered, then you'll get a little red indicator showing that that is active, as you can see with the light bar there. Now, radar is not currently hooked up, but if that was hooked up, you could have your target lock and patrol values listed as well. Another tab for GPS data. That is going to show you your latitude and longitude, where that vehicle is. So as it's traveling around, this will update every second, showing you the new coordinates of wherever that's at. And the location of interest data, that is part of the configuration. So if there is a particular area that you want the system to always start recording when it gets to that zone, you can set that up as well. Most agencies don't use that, but if it is set up, then that could pop up there. You also have event profile data. If you need to enter in ethnicity, gender, or age, that is provided. And then the last tab, of course, for the marks. Kind of covered that already, but a secondary function of the marks is, say for instance, you've got an officer that went out, started recording, and 15 minutes go by, their stop is done, they go about their shift, they forgot to stop the recording. They don't realize it until, say, an hour down the road. Well, if you are trying to provide a video to a prosecutor or something like that, and only the first 15 minutes are relevant out of that 1 hour long recording, you can use the marks to create a new segmented video. So say for instance, I want to add a mark to this point in the video here. I'll go ahead and add that mark in. We'll save it. And then using this second icon, little paper with the scissors on it, you can do segment video. You simply choose a beginning point as one of those marks. and an ending point as one of the other marks. Give it a description, reference number if you'd like. You can also give it an event ID, workflow state, and a retention policy. In this case, we're just going to leave that be. I'll hit create here. And what this is doing is creating a new video of just the beginning to the end point that you selected. It leaves the original completely be. So if I go back to the video search page here and refresh, you'll see that we've got this new video. I gave it a description of segment, makes it easy to find it. And if we open this up, it's the same exact video, just between the 2 points that I selected. So again, very useful if you only need 15 minutes, say, out of that hour-long recording. So then you can take this one and share it out instead of the whole thing. But it's still its own standalone video at this point. You can add all of the details to it as you need, and the original is left completely alone. They aren't linked in really any way, so there's nothing destructive that's going to happen by you creating a new segment. There's nothing that you can do to this segment that's going to affect the original at all. So I'll go back to that video that we were on. Oops. And in here, there are a few other options. This first one is media details. It's going to give you more information about the actual videos, the names of the files themselves, where they're stored, what firmware version the mirror is on, that kind of stuff. So really mostly troubleshooting information. You also have this DVD kind of icon for Burn Movie DVD. That's pretty antiquated. I wouldn't recommend using it. You also have an image capture. So say for instance you want a screenshot of, say, this point in the video, you can use that image capture, click on it, and you can hit save to save that screenshot for whatever purposes you may have. You also have this icon, it's kind of a globe with binoculars on it. That's the Map It feature. Oh, I'm not currently connected to the internet, but for a vehicle that has GPS and is valid, and you have an internet connection, that Map It feature is basically like Google Maps. It's going to show you where the vehicle started a recording, the entire path that it took during that recording, and the stop point. So pretty useful if you, say, have a vehicle that goes on a pursuit. You can actually map out exactly where that vehicle had traveled the whole time. And when you go to play back your video, you can actually see where the vehicle is at that point. So pretty handy. Back on the video search page, you do have several options with a right-click menu. So you can right-click and play. Really, that's no different than just double-clicking. You also have export and burn data disk. These two are going to be your primary export methods. The difference between them is export tells you to export to a particular folder somewhere. So maybe you want to export it to your desktop or a folder in your documents or something like that. Whereas the burn data disk is going to export to a DVD, CD, or if your machine is capable, even a Blu-ray. So depending on what you're looking to do, you can either export it to a folder, put it on a USB drive or something like that, or burn it to a disk instead, if that's the preferred method. Burn Movie DVD is particularly useful if this video needs to be played back in a DVD player. That's really the only use case for this, because if you're trying to play it back on another computer, export or burn data disk, that's the way to go. Burn Movie DVD is going to only allow you one video stream. You can't do both, the road facing and the interior facing on it. And the process of doing that conversion from its original format to something a DVD player can read takes quite a lot of time. It's a pretty slow process. So if you had an hour-long recording, it might take 4 hours for that to actually burn to a disk. So pretty antiquated at this point. I really don't see agencies using this hardly ever anymore, but it is there if you do need it. And then, of course, permissions permitting, you can do deletion or archiving. You also have the Map It function again. You also have the chain of custody report and verify integrity check. The chain of custody report, let's say this one here. This is going to give you a nice printable format of the details on the video that you've selected, but also all of the activity that has occurred with it. So when it was uploaded into the system, who's played it back, what details did they add and change, when it was exported, when it was segmented. All of these details are captured as part of that log, and subsequently as part of the chain of custody report. So if for any reason that it's called into question about who's had access to this chain of custody report will tell you exactly who's done what and who's been able to access it. The verify integrity check is another one that kind of goes hand in hand with that. And what this allows you to do is verify that the videos and the metadata files are the same as when they were uploaded as they are in that moment. So if you hit start on this verify integrity check, it's going to go through and check, again, the video files and also the metadata files to ensure that they are bit for bit identical, that they haven't been changed or modified in any way, shape, or form. If they have, this integrity check will come back and say failed. Otherwise, it will say that it has been successful. So in my case, it did fail. Process was interrupted. Not entirely sure why. Let's try a different video here. Had interrupted again. Might be just my particular machine, since I don't have like an internet connection and such. But it will come back either with a pass or a fail if the process actually can run all the way. And that will let you know that, hey, this file is identical, it hasn't been doctored, hasn't been modified in any way. And what you can do is this view report button down here to put that into a nice printable format that can be provided with the chain of custody report and the video itself, if that's ever needed. Now, another nice thing about this right-click menu is that you can have multiple videos selected at the same time and export them and burn them all to a data disk. You can also do the deletion and archiving, the mapit function, and also the chain of custody report and the verify integrity check. So the right-click menu is pretty useful for multiple different things on multiple videos. So any questions on what we've covered so far? Video search, my dashboard, any of the playback functions? All right. Now, another option is the upload. Now, this is the manual upload procedure, which at this time probably isn't something you guys would be utilizing since your machines don't allow for USB and media card access. But if that is allowed on any machines at any point in time, you can use this to pull videos off of the memory cards, plug it into your computer, and upload them directly into ViewVault, rather than relying on the wireless connection outside of the vehicles. So to utilize this is pretty straightforward. You simply use your source option to select the memory card on the machine. Once that's done, hit OK. It will refresh the list with any videos that it finds. And in here, it gives you quite a bit of details about if it's checked, it's going to upload it. If it's unchecked, it's not going to. The name of the event, the start time, the end time, the size of the file itself, and the status. Now, the status column is important because it will tell you why a video can't be uploaded. Whether, in this case, duplicate files found, that's already in the system. Or maybe it's a user is on that video that isn't defined in the system. Or maybe it's from a device that's not defined in the system. Or there's files missing, there's corruption. I mean, pretty much any reason that that file can't be uploaded, the status column will tell you why. And anytime a file can't be uploaded, it will be grayed out like you see here. You just get this gray bar. For files that are valid, they will all be checked by default and ready to be uploaded. To start the upload, you simply use this Upload Files button on the right. That will tell you that it's uploading, and you'll get a progress bar at the top there. As files get uploaded, it will progress. There we go. Now, I have it currently set up where it will prompt if you want to remove the files from the memory card or not. By default, that's not enabled, but I like seeing this. So you can either choose yes or no. In this case, I'm going to hit no, and it lets you know that the process has been completed. Hit OK. Boom, there you go. So manual upload process is super handy in those cases where maybe you don't want to wait for the Wi-Fi to upload everything. Maybe the Wi-Fi is not working for some reason. You can grab that memory card and upload it this way. So we'll work with IT to see if that's something that ends up being possible or not. At this time, it's not going to be useful since everything will go through the Wi-Fi instead. Any questions on the upload process? All right. So now we've covered pretty much the day-to-day operations on how to get into the system, review videos, add details, and export them. The rest of this is all going to be admin when it comes to users, devices, configurations, system settings, all of that. So we'll just jump into the user section here. Now by default, there's just these two users in here. But as you add more in, you'll use that add user button in the top right hand. First things first is the employee ID field. This is a unique identifier for each user. It doesn't necessarily need to correspond to a number that you guys know. It just has to be unique because this is the only place you will ever see that ID. This is how the system keeps users with the exact same usernames unique. So it's also the one field that once it's saved, you cannot change it, you cannot modify it, and you cannot ever duplicate it. So that is a thing to keep in mind. A lot of agencies will make this an ID that matches that one particular user, as long as it's one that's not going to be reused at any point in time. Device sign-on ID, that is an optional field. Now with the DVM800 in-car video systems, you have two login methods. You can either use user names, which is how the system operates by default. Users will just be all listed out on that login page. They simply select which user they are, hit enter on that, it'll prompt for their password. If you define a device sign-on ID, you have the ability to, instead of having a list of users, it'll just prompt for the device sign-on ID. So punch in that number, and then it'll prompt for a password. So instead of having to sift through a list of 100 users, which can take quite a bit of time, by using the device sign-on ID, it acts like a shortcut. You just have those two numbers you punch in, the sign-on ID, and the corresponding password. So if that is a system you would like to use, then make sure that the device sign-on ID is defined for each user. And again, that does need to be a unique number because you can't have duplicates. Now that can be changed after the fact, so that's not a huge deal, but again, you can't have duplicates. Username. This just needs to be something that makes sense to you guys. You can have duplicates here. I wouldn't recommend it. Makes it a little harder to figure out who's who, but the username field there up to 20 digits, so define it however you want. That is what's used to both sign into the ViewVault software as well as what will be listed out in that user list at the mirror. And then for password, this is 6 to 10 digits only, numbers. So this is a limitation that's carried over from the mirror system itself. The mirror is only capable of 0 through 9. So same thing here. So just make sure that that is a password that they'll actually remember. Some agencies will use a badge number and either double it up or add some numbers to the beginning or the end to make it easy. But realistically, anything between 6 and 10 digits is perfectly fine.
Can all three of those be the same? The employee ID, device sign-on, and username?
Yeah, if you wanted to, you could do, all of these fields are identical, the exact same thing.
Okay.
Just know that the employee ID field is the one that cannot be changed, cannot be duplicated once you hit save.
Now, if you go ahead and delete that one out, that profile out,
Nope.
that,
So when it comes to users in the system, once you add them in, you cannot delete them. You can only mark them as inactive. But that also means that even though they are inactive, you still cannot have a duplicate. And the reason for that is users are attached to videos, and the videos may be in the system forever. You never know. So you cannot delete a user out of the system because they may be attached to a video.
Okay.
But once you have your password punched in there, you just confirm it below, and then we can get into the permission side of things.
Can we go ahead and create a user right now, for instance, myself as a test
Well,
case?
you already got one. And this is not our actual live system.
Okay, that's just a.
Yeah, this is just off my laptop, yeah. Because currently we can't get videos to upload into your ViewVault instance because there's some IT stuff that needs to be handled. So for anybody that needs full access to absolutely everything in the software, as you see here, that's what the administrator checkbox is for. Gives them full access to everything, and obviously grays out system administrator over here, so you know that, hey, this person is a top level administrator, they have access to absolutely everything. Beyond that are permissions that kind of govern access with videos. This dropdown has none, own, or all. By default, search, play, and upload is set to own, which basically means that the user has to have their name on a video in order for them to search for it, to play it back, or to upload it manually in the system. Obviously, that's not something, the uploading side of things, isn't something that they will have access to, and you don't really want them to search or play for videos. So anybody that needs access at the mirror to start recordings and log in and such, but they should not have any access to ViewVault, you can come in here and set all of these permissions across the board to none. If they were to ever get logged into the system, the only thing that they would be prompted with is a single option off to the side for My Dashboard that loads nothing. That's it. They won't have any access to anything else.
So for clarifications, that setting right there is what we're gonna give the officers, correct?
Right.
Clarifications.
Just,
So
yeah, none.
all they'll be able to do is log in at the mirror, and that's it.
Yep. Yeah, they'll be able to log into ViewVault, but there just won't be anything for them to do.
Okay.
Beyond that is going to be maybe your supervisors that need to be able to review all videos. In that case, choose the all permission. Now they can search and play all videos regardless of whose name is attached to that video. And a few of the other things that are useful, like update video information. Setting that to all would allow them to add in a reference number or an incident number or change the event ID, things like that. Add a description. But you also have things like delete video or archive video. Those are typically administrator level functions, but you could allow that here. Burn or export those videos, own or all. The move video files, that's kind of obsolete at this point. I don't think it really does anything, especially in your particular environment, so just leave that as none. View activity logs, that is going to be useful if you want to do basically access to see, like with the chain of custody report gives you that activity log, that's what you would end up giving them access to. The checkboxes at the bottom are all administrator level functions. So in this case, if you do manage users, that is access to this user's page as you see here. If somebody has access to that, they have full access to come in here and create users, modify them, change permissions. So got to be a little bit careful on who you give that access to. Almost always I see that these checkboxes are left unchecked because if somebody needs access to one of them, they're most likely just an administrator to begin with.
So could you go ahead and set those top ones there to what we would be giving to the sergeants? And that would be just like you have it now. So they have the search and play all. The upload you have is all. View activity logs, I would say make that all as well so they can see what's happening. I don't want them to be able to delete or archive videos because the archives will go on its own, correct? Or no?
Yes, there's an automatic archive policy and an automatic delete policy. Now,
Okay.
I don't believe either one of those are enabled in your system, but they can be enabled.
Okay. And then, so the burn and export, they should be able to do that as well. And then I'm going to take a picture of that so that way when we're duplicating these users, you specifically will know how to give them that access. Because until this is all set up, you are an administrator just as I am. Now, I can tell you what I did for yours when I set yours up. I made these two the same, and then your password. So, the password I gave you the other day, that's still, you got that. So,
Yeah.
we'll have to log into the actual system, our actual system, and change your password or whatever you want it to be, unless you want it to stay that way. Because I don't even remember what it was. I hope you do, because.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay.
You showed it to me.
And then for the officers, like I was saying, they're gonna get nothing. All they're gonna have is to where they can log into the camera, and that's it.
All our stuff is gonna say none.
None.
So, on the other more administrative level functions, with the manage users, manage devices, manage events, these are all access to the pages that you see in this admin section on the left. Beyond that though, there are a couple that are exceptions, like manage operator. That would allow somebody to go into the video and change who the actual user is on a video. So whether that's nobody, in the case of somebody started recording without logging in, or it's set to the wrong user, that manage operator would allow them to change that. So I don't know if that's something you would want to give to the supervisors or not, but that is an option.
I would think we would leave that as an administrator option, so that way, if even the supervisor says, hey, this happened, then a lieutenant or above has to go in and make that change. So that way we know for a fact the change happened to it came from that source and not just, oh, hey, yeah, I think we should go change it, so.
Then activate device media and format device media. DVMS settings menu, all of these options are, well, we'll cover those a little bit further in the section here. But again, I pretty much never see these checked unless they're already going to be a full-blown administrator. So if you do need those functions on a particular user and they don't need to be a full administrator, that's a very particular use case, and I definitely recommend talking with us about that to figure out whether or not that's something you want to do or not, because you wouldn't want to give somebody inadvertently more access than they should have. But once you have all of those fields defined on the user information on the side there, as well as all of the permissions, you simply go to the save button on the side there to save that user into the system. Now, say for instance you have somebody that ends up leaving, what you can do is go to their particular user, select them, you've got this active checkbox here. Simply uncheck that box and hit save. Now they are no longer in the active list, and you can see all of your inactive users using this show inactive checkbox here in the top right hand. All of your inactive users will show up grayed out like this. Say for instance somebody leaves, ends up coming back 6 months later, 6 years later, you can actually come in, check that box again for active and hit save. Boom, now they have access again to the system. By marking a user as inactive, they can no longer log into the software. You can still search for them, looking for a particular user. They are still able to be searched for. You just can't sign in into the software using that user. You also, once you actually activate the memory cards for the in-car systems, they won't show up in the user list either. So it is important that if you do remove that person, that you do reactivate the memory cards so that they are also removed from the mirror systems.
So if we could talk about the memory card thing real quick, just because we are recording this. Anytime we add a user, it's got to be done on that memory card, yes?
Yes, the other option is to do it through the server side. but until we have the wireless working 100%, that's not going to work. Because what you can do from the server side is get your configuration and push it out as a wireless update. So anytime the vehicles come in and connect to the access point, they'll offload their videos, look for any updates that are available, and download those from the server. So if you have new users that you've added in and you push that configuration out through the wireless, then those systems will automatically get that whenever they're done with their next upload. So you wouldn't have to have the memory cards to do that update, but that is also contingent on the fact that they do come in, they can connect to the access point, and they do offload their videos. If for any reason that doesn't work, then they're not going to get the update files. So you absolutely can use that as your primary method to update the cards, but you definitely need a way to do the updates manually if required.
So who has access right now to do it from the server side?
I think you're the only person that has access server side outside of like Latasha Johnson.
How do I have access to that from the server side?
So you were able to sign into the server itself prior to when we put the ViewVault application on your computer. You were remoting into the server before you could get into the ViewVault software, right?
Yes.
So that is how you would do it, is basically that same process.
So I'll remote in and I still use the ViewVault where I was?
Yes. So you would end up using ViewVault to get the configuration file, and then there's another tool on the server that you would use to push that file out as an update.
So I'll need to make sure that someone in IT knows how to do that, because all of that stuff is beyond my scope of ability.
Yeah, I would recommend that you have at least 2 people that have the ability to do that. Most likely administrators, somebody who has access to everything in the software already, so that they can do that update, for one, and for 2, IT having access to it is a nice backup.
I have a question for you. So you said when the cars come in to the access point downstairs and it offloads the video, right? How fast does that happen? Because say for instance somebody comes in, they're finished mobile patrol for that day, and they park the vehicle, then they go to the camera system and log out. Does the videos automatically upload like that, or do they have to stay logged in for a certain amount of time before they log out of the camera system, log out of their profile?
So it doesn't matter if you're logged in or not. It's going to just keep uploading.
Okay.
And it also doesn't matter if you're done with your shift or not. If they come back halfway through shift and they need to come in, do some paperwork, or grab lunch or
Once
something.
you're within that area, it's
As long as it's within range, it will automatically connect and automatically push the files to the server.
Okay.
How fast that occurs is going to be dependent on a number of factors. It's going to come down to how many devices are connected and offloading at one time. It's going to come down to how much video that they've gone and actually recorded that day. So it could be that you have video files within a handful of minutes. It could be that they were recording for hours and you have 3 or 4 different devices. It might take a few hours for those videos to actually end up on the server. So it just depends. Usually the system is set up with an ignition shutdown timer that is sufficiently long enough that it will consistently offload all of the day's videos before the system actually shuts down. So usually I see that set up for an hour, 2 hours, just depends. But again, it's going to come down to how many devices are connected and uploading at one time and how much video was actually recorded. If you want videos to upload quickly, the best way to do it is to come in periodically throughout the day rather than just waiting to dump everything at once. The nice thing is, if they're in the middle of one video file that they're uploading and they have to go, the system kind of puts a bookmark at that point. So when they return, it picks up at that point rather than having to start over at the beginning of that file. So there's no need to worry about having videos that are lost or having to spend all of that time re-uploading something, because it'll pick up right where it left off.
I would say we make this a stopping point so we can get on the 11 o'clock. And then, wait a minute.
Yeah, we still have another hour.
That clock's not right.
No,
Never
it's
mind.
not.
Never mind.
That was interesting.
So, Any questions on the users side of things? Permissions, anything like that?
We're just gonna have to get with IT here soon and see if we can square that away. If not, we'll have to figure out something else, because me remoting in and doing what you said to do with all that, I don't feel comfortable that we should be doing it that way.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier if you have access to just plug a memory card into your
But
laptop.
now, does it need to be all 4 memory cards?
So the nice thing is that the configurations and the user list is going to be identical.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take that memory card and plug it into any of the mirror systems and it will take those files. But every memory card has to be updated, because every memory card, when it gets plugged in, those are the files that it's reading. If they aren't up to date, then it's not going to have up-to-date information. It's not going to have the correct
So
user list and
I
things
feel
like
like
that.
the way going forward is we need to get everyone's username and passwords at once, and then do the server side update and do it that way. So by default, we could do the username and the usernames like I did with yours, last name, first initial, and then could we set up like a generic password and then go back and change them at a later time?
Yeah.
I would recommend we do that.
Who's gonna create the password? We gonna create the password?
You
for
and
the
I are
user?
the only two that are able to do it.
I know, but I'm just saying, we create a generic password initially for each user, right? What I'm trying to get to, does each user gonna create their own specific password? Or we're gonna create, for instance, like the gun box, right? That, to get into the gun box down by BM5, that password was given to me. It was created by 11 or whoever. I'm just saying, for this purpose, are each individual user gonna create their own password, or are we gonna create a password for them?
In a perfect world, I would say they would create their own password. However, because we have to get into the server, go into the server, go out of the server, go into the server, go out of the server.
Yeah.
I would say we create the password and give it to them.
Right. I think that's the best way to go about it.
So I would, I mean, we could even do that today if, it'll be a minute, but we could do that today while he's here.
Yeah. Like I said, a lot of agencies will just use badge numbers, and if they're not 6 digits long, they'll either double it up or add some numbers to the beginning or the end, just to make it easy for the users to have a password that they can remember quickly and easily. But again, whatever password you give them, it's pretty easy.
I would say we do that today.
Yeah. And we'll just have a list of all the names and
Go get
their
a list
passwords.
from someone right now. Actually, you could start that while we have the 11 o'clock command meeting with it. Get a list of everyone in the agency, or I mean in the POD, and just start that. Their username would be just like what I gave you, last name,
Last name, first initial.
And then I would go with what he said, double up the shield number. Because everyone's got at least 3 digits, right? And then for those like myself that don't, like, because mine's 12, triple it. Yeah. Because it's got to be, how many digits, you said?
Has to be at least 6.
Yeah, so like,
So, yeah, that
for
makes,
mine,
that's
it'd be
easy.
like 12,
Yeah.
12, 12.
Yep.
Now, you and I already have separate passwords. If you want yours to be that way, we can go change it. I'm gonna leave mine the way it is because I've been using that one for now, so I'll mess it up.
Yeah, I think I'm probably gonna change my
Okay.
password.
So if you could, once we break from this and then start that meeting, start working on that, and then we'll have him or whoever to upload that into the server, so that way we're good, at least with that.
Yeah, I think I get it from, I think CPOP would have
Okay.
a list of everybody in POD,
Right.
including, the guys in Flexi, they don't have shield numbers yet.
We'll worry about that later.
Yeah, well, okay. Everybody that's here, I'll just
Or you
double
could-
up their shield numbers.
Or, so the ones that are in Flexi right now, just give them a generic password, but like 0, I don't wanna say because we're recording, but like, just change it by 1 number so that way we know. You know what I mean? And then we can go back and change it later on if we need to.
Okay.
Alright. Now, in regards to permissions, there's another option you have with security groups. So what you can do is come in and define different security groups, define the permissions for that group, and then simply go to the users and add the users to that particular security group. And the way the permissions work in ViewVault is it's going to be whatever is the highest. So if a group that a user is assigned to has higher level permissions than their particular user does, then they will gain those permissions. So say for instance you had an administrator added to a officers group that has access to absolutely nothing. That administrator would still have administrator access because that is the higher permission level. So this can be kind of useful to make it so that you don't have to manage users individually. You just simply go to which group that they belong to, add them to that group, and boom, they get those permissions. However, because defaults on each user is upload, search, and play set to own, you would have to go in on, say, your officers and set that to none across the board in order to really benefit from using security groups. So this is an option if you wanted to go that route. Otherwise, you can just define the permissions on each user individually. Any questions on the users or permissions, security groups, anything like that? All right. So on the devices section, this is where you'll manage all of the equipment. So in this case, you guys just have the 4 in-car systems currently, with that 5th one as a spare. With those defined in the system, you can then give each one of these devices a particular name. So you simply give it a name, a description, that's completely optional. But more or less, for the name of the device, just make it something that's quick and easy for you to identify. When you go to play back the video, what did this video come from? Is it the Edge? Is it the Interceptor? Is it the Durango? Something like that. Or you can call it by, let's say, the license plate number, or Unit 1, Unit 5, something like that. Just whatever is quick and easy for you. But once these are defined in the system, you've got this DVM 800 settings tab at the top. This is the global configuration. It's what all of those devices will follow by default. So in here you can define all of the general settings, say for your date and time, how long the ignition shutdown timer is set for, your brightness of the display during the daytime versus the nighttime, your login mode, whether it's username or user ID, your profile information. So in this case, with the event ID enabled, that's that prompt that comes up. They stop the recording. It asks, is this a traffic stop, a pursuit, warning, arrest? That's a prompt that you can enable or disable. Same thing with the incident. That can be a field that pops up asking for an alphanumeric incident number. Whether that corresponds back to a case or a report number or something that you have, you can add that there. You can also skip over that, or you can just leave it disabled. You have your record settings that govern how the system is actually going to record, the quality of it, the frames per second, how the audio functions. So with pre-event enabled, you can have it set up so that there's no audio across the board whatsoever. There's no audio in the pre-event, but there is once the recording has started, or enabled, where you just have audio at all times. And that ties into this next one with record mode, ECA. That's what we call evidence capture assurance. The way that works is it's a first in, first out kind of basis, where all of your normal events, when you hit your, say, your light bar, you hit the record button, hit record on the microphone itself, all of those are going to get recorded as an event. Those are the ones that will upload through the wireless access point and end up in the system after every day's shift, right? But with ECA, everything between those events are recorded on that first in, first out basis, where it's going to record the last, depending on how the settings are set up, 15 or 16 hours worth of video, and whatever is oldest is what gets overwritten first. None of those get uploaded into the ViewVault software. More or less, it's there in the instance of maybe you had a record trigger malfunction. Maybe your officer just didn't start a recording for some reason. As an administrator, you can come in after the fact and retrieve the videos off of that internal memory. That's part of that ECA event loop. So this is very, very handy in those instances, again, where maybe your officer just forgot to start a recording, or maybe there was a malfunction of some sort. Maybe they hit the light bar and it didn't start a recording, or what have you. That allows you to go back and find videos that would otherwise have been lost or not recorded at all. Number of channels. Since this is a dual stream system, you can record one single stream if you want, or you can record both of them. Because you guys don't have any external cameras, when you hit dual, it's using the internal road-facing camera and the internal passenger-facing camera. And that means that every time you hit the record button, or you start a recording in general, both video streams are going to start. This can be set up as single, where it will only use your first source, as that's what starts on a recording. And you can add in the second recording whenever you need it. So say, for instance, you have it set to single, you can have it recording the road. But if you need to transport somebody, you hit a button on the mirror, it'll start recording that second rear-facing feed for when you need to transport somebody. This can be useful for a few different reasons. One, you're not recording the back seat whenever you don't actually have anybody you're transporting. Two, which is really goes right hand in hand with that, well, now you only have one video feed recording instead of two. It's half as much data. It's going to take half as much time to upload that into the ViewVault system at the end of the shift over that Wi-Fi connection. So with only half of the data, obviously faster transfer, but also less data being stored on the server in the long run. So that can be beneficial, but at the same time, that requires your officers to actually go up and hit a button on the mirror to start that second video feed. A lot of agencies don't want to rely on that, so they'll just leave it as dual and record both at all times. You also have your prevent buffer. By default, that is set to 30 seconds, and every 6-second increment down all the way to 0 is an option. So if you want to disable it, you hit 0, but if you want to make it shorter, you can do 6, 12, 18, 24, or 30 seconds. Event loop is off by default. If you turn that on, the system is basically going to let you fill up the memory card, and whenever it is full, whatever is the oldest recording will get overwritten first. So I don't see any agencies typically using that. It's almost always, if the memory card gets full, you're just not allowed to record anymore. With ECA especially in place, the regular events go onto the memory card, get offloaded to the wireless, and if for any reason you do need to go back and review what's on the internal memory, that's where that first in, first out kind of a loop of recording is available. Cameras down here, this is where you define your source 1 and your source 2. In this case, with internal passenger facing being source 1, that is what will pop up on the monitor anytime a recording is going. If that was set to internal road facing, you would see a feed of the road instead. So whatever's, again, your source 1 is on, that's what's on the display itself. And then source 2, set that to whatever your second camera would be. IR LEDs is set to auto. That's going to be for that interior passenger facing camera. If it's dark in there, those infrared LEDs will turn on and better illuminate everything that's going on. You can disable that if you don't want that to be on at all. You can also set that to just auto, which is the default, for it to automatically turn on and off depending on the lighting conditions. So if it's a super bright day, you got the windows down, the infrared LEDs, they'll be off. But if it's at nighttime, you're going to be on. Radar. If you guys had radars that were hooked up to the systems, you could actually record the target, luck, and patrol readings with the video itself. In this system, currently it's all disabled. You also have a motion tab where you can configure the accelerometer and the vehicle speed. By default, the accelerometer is disabled, but what I always recommend customers set it for is that you go custom and set the collision to 4.0. That allows for the system to automatically start a recording if you're in a sufficient enough fender bender. And more or less what's going to happen is if it hits that 4.0 threshold, which is roughly speaking 4 Gs, so it does need to be fairly significant, not just somebody bumped into the fender kind of deal, that will actually start a recording if the system wasn't already recording.
Do you have a way of defining what each one, like 1, 2, 3, 4 would be. So let's say, for example, we have a vehicle goes out and it's coming out of our area and it runs into the
That parking barrier.
Yeah.
So, with these, there's a couple presets. There's low, there's normal, and there's high. And these are going to give you, as you can see, point values.
So those are G-forces.
It's roughly speaking G-forces. It's not a calibrated system, so you can't just assume that it's perfect. But generally speaking, it's pretty close. And you can see that acceleration, braking, cornering, and vertical are all values that are way below 1. Because realistically, to hit 1 in a vehicle, that's some pretty serious amount of movement happening. That's why collision is going to be a much higher number, because if you're hitting, say, railroad tracks or potholes, or you just have rough roads in general, having that set to say 1.0, you can end up triggering that every day if that vehicle is in the situation where the road is that bad, right? So having it set high enough means that you're not getting a bunch of false positives, but also you don't want it set so high that if you do end up in a fender bender or something, that it doesn't record. Then again, ECA is there to kind of be that kind of fallback, if you will. But with acceleration, braking, cornering, and vertical, you can come in to use those presets if you want, but you can also use custom and define what you want those thresholds to be. If you set it to 0, it's not going to use it at all. Anything higher than 0 is your threshold. So again, it's all roughly speaking G-force. So 1 G is 1, basically the effect of gravity. And it's not calibrated, so it's not perfect match, but it's pretty close. In this situation here with the presets, you can use low, normal, or high, and each of these are going to adjust these values a little bit. So if you wanted to define your own, you go to custom and you simply specify which value you want.
So
And this is really one of those things that's a lot of trial and error, finding out what is a high enough threshold that you're not getting a bunch of false positives, but also not so high that you're not capturing the information that you want.
So for braking, and you might have answered this while I was out, but braking, would that be like, locking the brakes up, jamming on the brakes, oh shit?
Depending on what your threshold is set to, it could be as sensitive as you've touched the brakes at all, to the point of, well, you didn't hit the brakes, you slammed into a brick wall.
Okay.
So it's everything in between.
So 4G's an average.
4G is, you're in an accident. Like, you should never be able to hit that point in any normal operation, regardless of how hard you're driving the vehicle. I mean, your tires just won't let you go really past 1G is about as much as you're gonna get until you get into like high performance cars with ultra sticky tires and things like that. I mean, everyday vehicles, 1G is upper limit for sure.
Did you answer the question about the barrier when I stepped out?
Yeah, he was running 4G road.
So 4.0 is the
4.0.
really a good point for collision, because if you're hitting, say, potholes or railroad tracks or anything like that, having it say set to 1.0, you're gonna end up with a lot of false positives. Whereas if you go and set that say as 8.0, which is the highest it will let you go to, you're gonna end up with almost nothing being recorded ever, as a collision at least. You could probably even get hit pretty hard and still not trigger at 8.0. So 4.0 or 3.0 is typically where we'll set it to for a collision detection. But again, by default, these are all disabled. They're just zeros across the board. And when I set these up, I always set at least collision up for 4.0, even if the other ones are all disabled, because each one of these is a record trigger. So if you are using it for disciplinary purposes, then turn on the acceleration, braking, cornering, and vertical. Each of these are going to be slightly different. Acceleration, obviously, going straight off of a, say, stoplight. Braking is going to be coming up to the stoplight. Cornering is side-to-side movement, and vertical is up and down. So hill jumping, going over railroad tracks, that kind of thing. Beyond that is the speed source. Almost always it makes sense to set it up to GPS. Currently, the vehicles are not wired in for the sensor for VSS, or vehicle speed sensor. That is an option where you have a hardwired connection and just reads directly off of the speed sensor in the vehicle itself. Does require a little bit of configuration to do that, but GPS almost always works great. And then you can set your vehicle speed limit. So by default, that is set to 75 miles per hour. If you go over that threshold, it'll start a recording, and that's completely adjustable. If you don't want that functionality whatsoever, set it to 150. If you want that functionality to be set much, much lower, then set it to a value that's appropriate. Then you've got your sensor configuration here. These devices have 6 wired sensors that you can set up. By default, the light bar is a given. You know, every single vehicle that's got a light bar controller in it, hook up the lights. When you kick it on, it'll start a recording. You also have your wireless microphone. If you've got a DVM800 system, you've got a wireless microphone. That's another kind of one of those defaults. Beyond that, you could hook up reverse, brakes, vehicle speed sensor, and sensor 5 is just an open, completely configurable one. So the only ones that are hooked up currently are the lights and the wireless microphone. So you have a few different ones that you could hook up in the future if you needed to. I have seen some agencies hook it up to, say, their gun lock, to start a recording if their gun lock goes off, or even door sensors, where if you open up the tailgate, it'll start a recording, or open up the driver's door, the passenger's door. There's a lot of configurability in that in terms of being able to trigger a recording. Data transfer tab is how you set up the Wi-Fi. Currently that's all in there, so once that's set up once, you pretty much never need to change it again, unless you have multiple access points that you need to utilize. Some agencies do have multiple locations that an officer may go to offload video. So having those all defined in there, where the system can go to any of those locations to start offloading, works pretty well. And then lastly is the GPS tab. This is where you can define your home base location, latitude and longitude, and max distance. If you set this to anything above 0, once a vehicle travels outside of that set radius from your coordinate there, it will start a recording. So some agencies have used this for if a vehicle goes well outside of jurisdiction. They're like, why would somebody need to go outside jurisdiction? Let's go ahead and start a recording. There's that option. There's also the locations of interest, which kind of works in the opposite direction, where you define your particular location, you set up your radius, and you have a time that you can specify in terms of days, hours, and minutes, where a vehicle has to be within that particular radius for that set amount of time, and then it will start a recording. So with home base, it's go outside of this radius, start a recording. With locations of interest, it's come within this radius for a set amount of time to start a recording. And with locations of interest, you can set up multiples. So this can be kind of useful for, if you say maybe for disciplinary purposes, you know that somebody's going home on their shift periodically when they shouldn't be. Well, set up a location of interest for their home or whatever. The system will automatically start recording when they get within that area. I'd say most agencies don't utilize these, but they are there if you'd like. Any questions on the available settings here? I know we'll have to kind of discuss exactly what settings to put on those systems, but at least you guys are a little bit familiar now with what's available. Now, in addition to the global configuration setting is doing individual device settings. So say for instance, this device here, maybe this is a supervisor vehicle. Maybe it needs to operate slightly different to say an officer's vehicle. Or maybe you've got somebody who's always on night shift instead of day shift. You can come into the settings button for that particular device, go to whichever setting that you want, and you can see all of these boxes are currently unchecked. That means that they are not overriding the global setting, they're just using whatever the global is set to. So say for instance, this is a night shift guy and I want to come into the night mode brightness. Once that's checked, now I can override the global setting with whatever I choose. So you can actually set the brightness of that LCD display during nighttime for that one particular device to something different than what the others use. Or perhaps you want to do that with, say, record settings, or maybe this one has radar in it and the other ones don't. This allows you to define that on a per device basis rather than just globally across the board. So any questions on the configurations?
What's the transfer button there?
So jumping straight into that, the edit button, if you come in and change the name of the device and hit save, that is going to affect all videos across the board, new videos and old. So if you need to say, take this device and it's getting transferred to a different vehicle, you're uninstalling it, moving it into a new vehicle, or maybe that one was wrecked or you're getting rid of it or something, use the transfer button instead. Because what that will do is you give this device a new name, all of the old videos are still under the original device description, the name. It doesn't get changed, but everything moving forward is under the new name. So very, very handy if, say for instance, you're taking the equipment out of that Escape and putting it into a brand new vehicle, you would not want all of the old videos to go from being Escape to whatever the new vehicle is, right? This keeps all of that prior information intact. So that's the difference between the edit and the transfer. Edit affects everything, transfer only affects stuff from that point moving forward. And say for instance, you've got a device that you're sending in for warranty or what have you. If you go into the edit button, much like with users, you have this active checkbox. If you uncheck that, hit done and save, now it's no longer listed in the active devices list. You can use this checkbox down here for show inactive devices. And just like with users, all inactive ones will show up here grayed out. And you can always come into the edit and reactivate that device, hit done, save, boom. Now it's an active device again. So with a device that is inactive, what will happen is that device can now still be searched for in the system, but you won't be able to activate any new media for that device. So any questions on device management or adding new ones in or anything like that? Adding is pretty simple. You know, add device here. You just punch in the serial number for that device and give it a name. So no permissions or anything like that you have to define. As for events, these are those event IDs I was telling you about. By default, these are the 5 that you'll see: traffic stop, pursuit, warning, arrest, DUI. These can all be modified. These 5 are not required to be used. You can change it up as you see fit. I mean, I know a lot of agencies, they don't have DUIs, they have DWIs or OWIs, so you can come in and modify that. The only thing you can't change is the event key. Once it's saved, you can't modify that, but you can always change the description itself. You just come in, give it a new name, and when you hit save, there you go. Now again, if you have any events tagged to any of your videos, and you come in and change that description, it's going to update them. So do make sure that you're not just changing names after the fact if you don't want your existing videos to be affected by that. But with any of these, again, you can change the names of them, and then you can also add to this list. You just use that add event button in the top. Give it a key, which this should just be, up to 4 digits. So whatever makes sense to you. You don't have to go, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can do anything 4 digits long, and whatever description up to, I think, 20 characters. And the other nice thing about this is that you can use these tags, these event IDs. You can have as many as you want in the system. I've seen some agencies with over 100. I have absolutely no idea why they need 100 of them, but you could do it. Because they're all customizable, you can set whatever description that you want on them. Now, up to 20 of them, 20 in total, can be selected to show up on the mirrors. So if you enable that event ID prompt, they'll have a list of up to 20 that they can select from. So the way that's handled is this device types at the bottom. If it's highlighted, that's being applied. It will show up in that list. If you deselect it, you'll see that it's no longer checked over here on this column, and it will not show up on that system.
So you can have as many as you want, events you want, but the drop down in the actual car mirror is only, you said 20, right?
Up to 20,
Up to
yep.
20.
So you select which ones that you want to see.
Okay.
I mean, most agencies that I work with at least don't even have 20 event IDs to begin with.
Right.
And there's some times where they'll go in and deselect a few of them because they're more for administrators or something like that, rather than something like a category for a video, like traffic stop or something like that. So it's flexible in that way. But once you actually come in and hit save, then that'll be added to the list. If you don't want any of these to pop up, if you don't want to use warning or anything like that, just like with devices and users, you can come down to the active box, uncheck it, hit save. Now it's no longer in the active list.
Okay.
Show inactive, boom, it's grayed out. That's how you know it's inactive. And you can re-enable it after the fact as well. So any questions on the event IDs? Really, there's two big benefits to using these. One, categorizing videos, making it quick and easy to identify a video of, say you're looking through your thousands of videos and you're looking for DUIs. You may only have a few of those in there. Looking for that DUI tag is going to be the quickest and easiest way to narrow down your search results. But in addition to that, each one of these is customizable with an auto archive and auto delete policy on it, which allows you to set up, we'll jump over to the ViewVault settings here. If you enable the auto archive or auto delete policies, those are just the global ones. So every single video will follow what is defined here, but you can go to an individual event ID and say, for instance, you set up your auto archive policy for 2 years, but you only need your traffic stops for 90 days. You can set up your traffic stop event ID so that they automatically delete after the 90-day mark rather than waiting for the full 2 years. On the flip side, say for instance you need DUI videos for 5 years. You could set up your DUI event ID tag to retain the videos for 5 years, and it'll go all the way past the 2-year mark on the global and save until the first day of year 5, and then it'll go away. Or technically, first day of year 6. So that allows you a little bit of control over keeping data for only the amount of time you need, rather than just keeping everything for some blanket amount of time. Additionally is the auto archive side of that, where you can set it up so that videos, if you keep videos long term, using archive allows you to lock everything in on that video. Basically makes it read only. So if you have a particular event that you're keeping for, say, 5 years, and you want to archive that either manually or automatically, as soon as it's in that archive state, nothing on that video can be changed. You can still export it, you can still play it back, but you're not going to be able to change who the operator is or add a description, reference numbers, event IDs, none of that. It's all locked in.
Mm-hmm.
So more or less it keeps it in a kind of a protected state, if you will. Another benefit of using archiving, whether manually or automatically, is that you can exclude archived recordings from the delete policy. So more or less you can use the archiving feature as a way to safeguard a video from being deleted automatically. It won't keep it from being deleted manually. If somebody has the permissions to delete a video, they're going to be able to delete it if it's
And the only
archived
people-
or not.
And the only people who have to delete videos would be us, an administrator.
Admins, yep. Unless you've defined a permission on somebody that says, hey, you can delete videos, yeah. Only admins by default have that access. So while we're on this topic, I'll just click these boxes here so you guys can see the different options. But as you can see on both of these, you have a minimum workflow state. You can either do reviewed or not reviewed. And those workflow states are defined up here. You can add more if you want. You can also modify these names if you need. But using reviewed or not reviewed, everything uploads by default as not reviewed. Uploaded event workflow state, not reviewed, that's defined here. And that kind of sets, again, the minimum. So if a video uploads as not reviewed and you want all videos, regardless across the board, to be affected by the auto archive or auto delete policies, then set the minimum as not reviewed. And then you specify how many days before it will archive or delete. By default, archiving is set for 1 year and deletion is set for 2 years. But you are not required to use both of these. You could use one, you could use the other. It just depends on what you're looking for. But down here on the auto delete, you have the checkbox here for delete archived recordings. If that is unchecked, archived recordings are exempt. If you have it checked, nothing is exempt. It will just delete after the time frame that you have specified. Now the options down here for the auto delete after how many days and all of these checkboxes here, these are going to be useful only for particular record triggers. So say for instance you're doing maybe a disciplinary thing where you've got one of your devices or maybe even multiple set up so that your acceleration, braking, cornering, or vertical are turned on. You may not want to keep those videos for the full, say, 2 years of your auto archive or auto delete or auto archive policies. You could have that set up to delete after a different amount of time. And that's what you define here. Auto delete after how many days, and then which triggers do you want to follow that. I've seen some agencies set this up, say, for 2 weeks. If they've got a video that was started by the acceleration threshold being exceeded, then that video will stay in the system for 14 days and then automatically get deleted after the fact. This does not apply if, say for instance, that acceleration threshold is exceeded during an active recording. Like if you started it with the record button or with your light bar and that happens, that video is not going to delete under this particular policy. It will stay in the system. It's only if that was the initial record trigger. So the vast majority of agencies, I don't see you utilizing this feature, but it is there if you need it. So any questions on the auto archive or auto delete policies or using those with specific event IDs?
What do you standard, I mean, I know there's no generic answer to this, but what are agencies generally keeping as their auto delete policy? Like, how long is any particular video staying in the system before it is either manually deleted or auto deleted?
I would say more agencies than not have the auto delete policy set up.
Okay.
And aren't doing the deletions just purely manually. But to say for how long that they have that set up for is not something that I can really answer because it's just really all over the place. Some agencies have this set to 90 days, 30 days even I've seen. But I've also seen other agencies that have the auto delete policy set up globally at 5 years, 10 years. And they really utilize the event IDs to delete videos sooner than that.
So is it, since it's all based off the memory cards, right? Does that run the risk of locking those memory cards up to where they're too full?
So the benefit is as soon as the devices connect to the access point and start pushing videos to the server, the memory cards are cleared off one by one.
Okay, gotcha.
So in theory, if the devices are rolling up to that access point and offloading on a daily basis, they'll never get full.
Yeah, okay.
So regardless of what settings you set up here, the memory cards at the vehicles should be perfectly fine. Now that isn't to say that you won't fill up the data that's on the server, because if that fills up, then the videos are never going to be able to offload from the mirrors, and then those will fill up, then you won't be able to record. But that will probably take a pretty substantial amount of time. I mean, there's 2 terabytes of storage on the server
Right,
currently.
I was gonna ask that question, how many hours of video can each memory card hold before it gets filled up?
Again, that's going to come down to what record settings have been set up, whether you're recording 2 video feeds or only 1. But generally speaking, those 32 gigabyte memory cards will fill up after about 15 or 16 hours of record time.
Yeah, so we'll never
Yeah.
touch that.
Yeah.
Because at the very least, they gotta come back every 8 hours.
Yeah,
And so.
and
that should be-
most officers come in usually like once or twice a day anyway,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. But for the most part, having the auto delete policy set up from a global standpoint, I've really seen a couple different trains of thought on it, but the one that I think makes the most sense is to set it to be your worst case scenario. Because ultimately, if you have videos that come in that don't get tagged for any reason, then they're just gonna follow the global. And if you have that set to your worst case scenario of we don't ever need to keep videos past, say, 5 years, then that will keep those videos, those untagged videos or improperly tagged videos for at least the 5-year mark, right? And then using the event IDs and specifying a different range on those will allow you to remove videos sooner than that global time frame. So that's really the question there on whether or not you want to use the global as your catch-all, or if you just want to use your tags as a, okay, delete sooner or keep for longer kind of thing. I've seen it used both ways. I think the most important part is just making sure that your users are consistently at the mirrors, utilizing the event ID prompt, if you guys want that on, or that you're coming in and reviewing videos and tagging them appropriately as well. Again, you don't have to utilize the auto archive or auto delete policies on the tags, on those event IDs at all, nor do you have to use it globally. You could just archive and delete stuff on a per video basis, or say, oh hey, these videos are 5 years old, just select them all and delete. You could do that manually. You don't have to use the automatic procedures here.
So let's say, for example, because right now they're all set up to where lights come on, cameras come on. How long is the crosswalk detail in the morning or in the afternoon?
But it used to be 2 hours, now it's just like maybe an hour, hour and a half.
All right, so let's say an hour and a half. We have a vehicle that sits at the crosswalk for an hour and a half with the lights on. It's recording all that time. Now, I would recommend that when we talk with leadership, we should tag one of those as crosswalk detail. So user goes in, hits crosswalk, lights are on, crosswalk, whatever. I would say we should be able to delete that pretty soon, as compared to just keeping that on there for,
Yeah, 'cause
let's say,
those
5
happens
years.
pretty
Yeah,
much every
because that's
day.
gonna happen every day. So now you're talking twice a day, right?
Yeah,
Right.
morning and
Yeah,
afternoon.
so-
Also, don't forget about the RAM 2s as well. That
Right.
happens almost every day.
And those are an hour, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking on a day, a vehicle could potentially be lit up for 2, 4, 5 hours just on a routine thing.
Yeah.
And that's every day. So I think we should be able to delete that pretty quick. There'd be no reason to keep it on if it was uneventful.
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely do that with the event IDs,
Mhm.
as long as they're tagged properly, and have them delete after 14 days, 30 days, 90 days, whatever is appropriate.
Here's something that also need to keep in, well, more so the officers need to keep in mind is that when they're on crosswalk detail and they activate the light bar, now it's recording audio as well. So anything that they're on the phone, talking to each other, whatever, that's all being recorded. So,
So another consideration is the light bar trigger is currently set up for position 2. So if they go position 1 and it's only the rear lights, it won't start a recording. Even if it does start a recording, regardless of what position they're in, you can leave that trigger on, hit the record button, and stop the recording still. So there's the potential to not even record the entire crosswalk situation if that's what you want to train the officers on. During the training down at the vehicles, I didn't mention any of that to them.
Right.
So yeah, there is the potential to stop the recording even though the lights are still on. There's also the potential for it not to record if they only ever go to 1 and not to 2 or 3.
What's setting 1 right now?
one is just the back.
The backlights.
2 is, when you go to 2, it's usually everything, back and front.
3 is the siren.
And then 3, when you're in 3, then you have the lights and you can activate the siren.
Well, 1 wouldn't be using the crosswalk because
Actually, it is used.
just 1
It's the
only.
backlights.
It's officer discretion,
Yeah,
right?
depends.
I would want 360 exposure, but okay.
Sometimes they'll light up the back and just use the arrow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's for a later time, we can discuss that.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay, I'm good.
So if you do enable the global auto archive or auto delete policies, then when you go to the event IDs themselves, that's when you have this drop down option. By default, it's just going to do per policy settings and then give you what that global policy timeframe is. But you can also set it to never if you want it to just stay in the system until it's manually deleted, or after, and specify a different time range.
Okay.
So by default, that's going to show you the 730 days of the global policy. You can set that to a time frame that's shorter. You can set it to a time frame that's longer. I think it'll allow you to go all the way up to just past 10 years. I think it's like 3,999 days or something like that. So quite a time. Speaking of the View Vault settings, where the auto archive and auto delete policies are, this is where you can enable the device sign-on ID if you wanted to go that route rather than having a list of usernames. If you want them to just punch in their sign-on ID number and then be prompted for the corresponding password, this is where you enable it, and also where you set the length of that sign-on ID. By default, it is 3 digits, but you can set it all the way down to 1 digit if you really wanted to, or all the way up to 8 digits if you wanted to make it pretty long. So if this is enabled, there is no user list at all that pops up on the Mirror login page. It's just a enter in the digits for your sign-on ID, hit enter, prompts for the password. So can be helpful. I see this used mostly by the larger agencies that have more than 20 users or so, just so that they aren't having to sit there and click, click, click all the way down, scroll through that list of users. You also have a workstation tab here. This is going to show you every single device that has View Vault on it that has signed in, everyone that's been registered. So in this case, it's just my own local computer here, but if you were to do it on your laptop there, you'd see every single device that had been signed in with the View Vault. So that computer name is going to give you the full name of the machine itself, and also the last uploaded location, if it was ever done through the upload page. So in your case, they're all just going to be empty. But when they're listed in here, you're going to see the created on, who it was created by, and when it was last updated. File server information, for the most part, shouldn't have to mess with any of that. Once it's set up, it's set up. Don't really have to modify it. But if IT down the line says, hey, we've ran out of storage or something and they need to add another location in, this is where that would be done. W10 Lite is all of the wireless information. User-defined fields. Now, this is something that I don't see a lot of agencies utilizing, but it can be very powerful. As you can tell, user-defined fields. You set this up to be whatever you want. And these are prompts that you can add on the playback page for each video. So say, for instance, you want to come in here and add a text field. This is more or less just a box that you just type whatever you want in. And you can specify a default value for that and a maximum length. You can also do a list. So you can come in here, add whatever items that you want in there. These can be useful for all sorts of things. Same thing with numeric, true, false, or even a user list. But this more or less allows you to just have prompts for additional information in the system that you've defined what they are. Like, say for instance, the drop-down list. You can do specific parts of town, weather conditions, time of day. You could use it for specifying specific administrative things like keep this video or delete this video or what have you. It's really powerful in what you can do with it, but it's also something that I just don't see a lot of agencies utilizing. But if you do define these in here, like I said, on every single video, you'll have an option for user-defined fields where you can specify the answers to all of the prompts that you've specified here. You're not required to utilize them. You're also not required to fill them in if you do set them up here. So they're there if you need them. Beyond that, you've got activity logs. With the activity logs here, you can do a specific username if you're after that, a specific action, a specific device, specific event, or from a specific machine. More or less, this allows you to do a specific time range, depending on which fields you've chosen. And if you hit search, it's going to show you basically every single thing that's happened that meets that criteria during that time range. So as you can see, come in here, it's got, here, login successful, device was added, recording was added, settings were updated, another login successful, recording was played, recording added, with more details and such. Like, there's so many different things. Verify integrity check was ran. Every single action that happens in the system will pop up as part of this activity log. So if you're looking for a particular user or a particular device, specify that, give it a time range, boom, there you go, all of the actions that occurred. This can be exported, so this little gold text here in the top right-hand corner. Simply export that as a CSV file anywhere on your desktop or documents, wherever. And that CSV can be opened up with all kinds of different applications, but the easiest one is probably Excel. You also have Media Card Admin here. Now this is where if you can plug the physical memory cards into your machine or a card reader or something like that, where you can activate the cards themselves, put new users on them, new configuration changes, that kind of stuff. In your case, you'd only have the DVM800 devices from the drop down. And with that plugged into your computer, you simply refresh, select the device out of the list, and then you have different options here on the side. By default, it is set up to activate device, leave device data. That is going to keep everything on that card. If there's videos and such that are still on there that haven't uploaded, won't touch those at all. But it will overwrite the device configuration with whatever is the current one. So that includes your user list. If you were to add somebody or remove them, it would update that. The second option is this clear data and activate. That will delete everything off the card and then add the device configuration, your users, that kind of stuff. Format media and secure format media are much like clear data. It's going to delete everything off of that card. The difference is clear data is just like you selected all the files and hit delete. Format media is if you just did a Windows quick format on that device, and secure format is a Windows full format. So depending on what you're looking to do, for the most part, activate device, that's perfectly fine. If you're looking to just clear the stuff off of the card and activate it, the second option is the way to go. The formatting options are really only there typically for troubleshooting. For the most part, those don't need to be utilized, but if you do that, they are deleting everything off of that card permanently. You can't recover it, so those are there if need be. Once those are selected, you hit activate, and that will activate the card. So in this case, I hit activate, get a status message down here saying begin media card initialization and end media card initialization. When you get that end message, that's how you know the card has the new files on it and it's ready to go back into the mirror. Now, if for any reason you need to take this configuration file and save it on your computer somewhere, that's where this Save to Folder button is handy. Simply hit that, choose where you want to hit save it at, and hit OK. So now you have that device config file that you can do whatever you want with. If you need to email that to somebody or need to put it on multiple memory cards, then you can take that file, do what you will with it, and put it on the files, share it out, whatever you need. So any questions about what we've covered so far? All right. That's pretty much everything that I've got for you. There's some other fields that are in here that don't really apply to your particular use case. But if there are any questions or concerns that come up, just feel free to let me know.
We stop.